Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mayor and City Council Workshop, Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. If you'd please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flag of the United States of America,
Republic for which it stands,
God, indivisible.
Please show all members of council present. Next up, we have review of the minutes of the November 4th, 2024 combined meeting. Questions, comments, concerns by council? Hearing none, I am proceeding forward to reception of delegation. Gordian, sorry if I butcher any names, Robin Murhada? Perfect, nice. Cooperative procurement participation through the Maryland Department of General Services. The podium's yours if you'd like to start.
All right, can you hear me okay? Yeah. So first and foremost, just want to thank everyone here for giving me the opportunity to do this. I really appreciate it. You know, it's the week after Thanksgiving. It's late. I appreciate that. Today, I'll be going over the Maryland Department of General Services agreement that Gordian administers through the entire state, and just explaining the way it works. It is something that is available to you if you should choose to use it. So I just want to give you more information on exactly how it works, and then if you do choose to use it, I'll show you exactly how to do that as well. Any questions for me before I get in? Okay. So I'll go over a brief introduction of myself, some common construction challenges, what is JOC, J-O-C, how we can help, and then really take questions, next steps. If there are any questions before the end, feel free to stop me. So my name is Rob Murhada. I am local to Maryland. I work throughout the entire state in all regions. And so I see construction challenges all over the state, whether it's the Eastern Shore, the western part of the state, here in Carroll County, or down in St. Mary's, wherever it is. I've been there, and these are the main challenges that I typically see. So the first thing is aligning projects with strategic direction for the city. Rising costs, having reduced spending power, especially in today's day and age. How do you get the most bang for your buck with lumber prices going up and all these other materials that are starting to cost so much? Creating accurate cost construction data, which is pretty self-explanatory, but it kind of lends itself into the next topic, which is meeting project budgets and timelines. There's always, how can you take more off your staff's plate? Because especially as you get into the bid process and you get into the RFIs and you get into these different procurement challenges, it's a lot for one person or maybe even a small team to handle. And then the largest thing is the lack of transparency and auditability of programs, which I'll go over. I'll go over how we solve all of these challenges. The first really important thing to understand is, what is job order contracting? Has anyone heard of that before? Okay. Were you military, previous military?
No, I'm in the construction business.
Okay. So job order contracting, or JOC for short, it's an IDIQ contract vehicle. What that really means is it's an umbrella contract. Okay, instead of doing 3 projects that you need done separately in 3 separate instances or 3 separate RFPs or 3 separate bids, it's an umbrella contract. You can do all 3 of those projects under one pre-approved contract, and that goes through different contract vehicles. You've probably heard of Sourcewell. They offer one in the state of Maryland. Omnia Partners offers another one in the state of Maryland. The one I'm talking to you about today is the one specifically through the state of Maryland itself, through the Department of General Services, because they were so tired of having to go through out-of-state cooperatives like Sourcewell that's in Minnesota, which we still offer. If you'd like to use them, you're open to using them. But they were like, let's create our own program that abides by Maryland procurement guidelines and Maryland laws for public entities within the state, such as yourself. So that's the one I'll be talking about today. Okay, so job order contracting, umbrella contract, Maryland Department of General Services put it together. That's the one I'm talking to you about today. It's a single, one-time, competitively bid contract that awards multiple contractors the ability to come in and do work for public entities across the state, okay? And I'll explain how that works in a little bit. You can see here at the bottom on the left-hand side that construction tasks are based on preset costs. I'll explain more of that when I talk about how the state of Maryland actually set up their program. So this is the typical project solicitation process. I'm sure everyone here is familiar. It's long, it's lengthy, and this is what you usually have to do. If you have a renovation job, such as our first example in the top left, you're probably gonna prepare the design, develop the scope, put together the contract documents. You'll put out the RFP out to the street. You'll have folks bid on it. You'll probably have to advertise it in a specific manner that's, in line with your procurement guidelines. You'll have to answer RFIs. You'll usually give it to the person who, grades best on the rubric, the lowest responsible bidder. And then you finalize a contract, you issue it. The things that aren't listed on these steps are the ones that happen after you issue the contract, which is hoping you don't get hit with a bunch of change orders that add on to the cost of the job, that add on to schedule overruns, as well as really trying to beat an audit if you're using any federal or state or grant dollars, right? So the typical solicitation process is pretty long. What we did with the Maryland Department of General Services and their job order contracting program is we did all that upfront already with multiple vendors, okay? So we created the contract documents, we had the pre-bid meetings, we answered the RFIs, we conducted formal bid openings. You can look it all up in EMA or eMaryland Marketplace, and you can find all of the solicitation documents for how the state of Maryland awarded Gordian the contract to create a job order contracting program for them, and then we administer it as it continues for the next 5 years. So once we did that, you have this umbrella contract that you can do multiple projects under through the state. And I'm going to stop right there. I know that's a little confusing. Any questions for me so far?
Do you work for DGS or do you work for Gordian?
I work for Gordian.
So, are there multiple contractors in each discipline that reply to, how do you get contractors lined up to do work under the JOC?
Perfect. And that's actually one of my slides
Am I
coming
playing
up.
straight man for you?
Perfect. Thank you. That was a great segue. I appreciate that. So this is how the state program is organized, okay? On the left-hand side, you'll see how they split up the state. So DGS said we want the state to have 4 separate regions. On the right-hand side, you'll see the region that you're in, which is Region 2. It's the central region. The reason they wanted to split the state into 4 regions, as you can imagine, construction costs and the amount of contractors that are willing to bid on Garrett County is different than St. Mary's, is different than Baltimore City, is different than Talbot County. So each one of these regions, we went in with our cost estimators and our RS means data, which we own, and we came up with construction task catalogs. It's about 275,000 line items of construction costs and materials, and it's specific to your region. So that means lumber and drywall that you need in a renovation is different in Talbot County and Wacomico County than it is here, than it is in Garrett County, than it is in Charles and St. Mary's County. And this is how we set up the program. So when we were awarded the privilege of developing their job order contracting program, the first thing the state of Maryland wanted us to do was come up with detailed execution procedures. How are we actually going to develop this program for them? So once we had that completed, we did our outreach where we held pre-bid conferences, we answered questions, we advertised. Like I said, we had to put it all on EMA and ask for formal bids. Once that happens, the contractors who decide to bid on a specific region or a specific trade, because you can bid by region and you can bid within that region by trade. So whether that's roofing, site work, flat work, stormwater, electrical, mechanical, they would bid an adjustment factor, which means in that 275,000 item catalog that is specific pricing for your region, for this piece of drywall, for me to install or demolish that, whether that's picking it up at Home Depot down the street or waiting for that to come in from 16 weeks of a delay, whatever it is, for us to install or demolish that piece of material, this would be our cost with our overhead and profit for normal working hours, for non-normal working hours, which is, overnight work, evening work, for prevailing wage, which is compliant with Davis-Bacon and all those kind of federal rules that you need to follow, for non-prevailing wage. All of that was pre-bid upfront. Then, once they are awarded a contract, so once we say, you know what, verified you paid your taxes in the state of Maryland, you're in good standing, you also came in at a reasonable factor that is verifiable, you've shown previous work history, your insurance is good, your certificates of insurance, and you get awarded the contract, we'll actually train the contractors on how to use the software to build the proposals. It's not like we step back and we're not involved. We are on site with some of the initial steps before the construction is started, and even during the construction, we're happy to come out on site sometimes. And I'll explain all that in a moment here. Did that answer your question from before? Okay, fantastic. So there's some significant time savings there. If you look at a design bid build, depending on the size and scope of the job, it can take upwards of a year, 6 months to a year. I'm sure the marketing team did a great job with this slide, but 6 months to a year, depending on the size and scope of the job. With job order contracting, from us getting out on site to you getting a PO issued, it can be about 2 to 3 weeks, once again, depending on the size and scope of the job. You also have the ability to incorporate designs if you have a lot of work that needs specs or designs. A lot of folks like to use job order contracting because you no longer have to make the designs biddable and keep certain factors vague. You can make them buildable, and so therefore those typical process of a design bid build is actually accelerated, is a way to put it, with using design with JOC. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about job order contracting, what it is. So if you focus on this top bar, it's about 2 to 3 weeks. Average size in Maryland's about $250,000 job. We've handled projects. We just signed a project that was $12 million. We're doing a job down in PG County that's a $10,000 paint job. So it really, we can handle anything, but in terms of average job, you're looking at about 2 to 3 weeks. I'm going to kind of slide over this one. I kind of went over this, but you simplify the procurement process and you eliminate a lot of the negotiations with having preset costs. You reduce your change orders. You're not going to get change order on the back end. If it takes them 3 days longer to get the job done, it takes them 3 days longer to get the job done. You're not going to get hit with a change order or a change in pricing because it's a pre-bid cost that they've already agreed to. So this is the one I wanted to spend the most time on. We're not asking you to use us for every single project out there. There's going to be things that you should put out to bid, quite frankly. But for the things where it makes sense to use job order contracting, we're a great tool to have in your back pocket. The first and biggest thing being strict deadline to use funds. If you're on an accelerated timeline for any reason, if you're using ARPA dollars, ESSER dollars, federal funds, state funds, grant monies, and there's a deadline you have to spend that by or lose the funding, or you have an accelerated timeline in terms of, let's say you receive a grant and you have a certain amount of time to put a scope back by and get, and submit formal pricing. We can accommodate all of that because all of the contractors through the state of Maryland Department of General Services program are compliant to accept federal dollars, state dollars. They do prevailing wage. They can handle Davis-Bacon wages as well. And they all do certified payroll. So if you are looking to spend any type of money where there are strict, not only deadlines, but really strict rules and regulations about how to spend it, and you might get an audit, the job order contracting program through the state is an effective way to get those funds obligated and projects started, quite frankly. And the only other two things I'm going to touch on this slide are lengthy procurement processes. Like I said, we set up this with the state of Maryland to get work done quicker for them. They just allow public entities to piggyback off of it. DGS Department of General Services, State of Maryland uses this every day for projects. We work with State Highway and a number of other state agencies that are using this, Department of Natural Resources. But if you want to piggyback off of this contract and use it as a public entity in the state, you get to do that and shorten your procurement cycle. The only other thing is limited contractor availability. You do have the ability to identify local qualified subcontractors if if we're doing a renovation for you and there's 7 trades in there, and you really have a great flooring guy who lives in this city and pays taxes here, and you want him to get the business, you are fully allowed to, as the state of Maryland says, give that contractor the business for that piece of the flooring. The liability and all that would still fall under the general contractor who holds a contract with the state, and they'd still have to be okay with it, but you can request that. And as long as they're qualified, we can do that. Not going to touch on any of this except the expertise. Only thing you need to know is we invented job order contracting in the 80s. It was a way for NATO to build airstrips in different countries. The guy who founded us thought, wow, I came up with this great way for contractors to do this work in all different countries. Why don't we have a way to do this in the military? If you are previous military in Navy or Army and heard of the SABRE program, we were that. And now we've expanded to public sector and healthcare. So if you're using public dollars, you're probably using Gordian. We also own RS Means, which is a catalog of construction cost data dating back to the 1920s. We bought them about a decade ago. So a lot of our construction data and pricing comes from that as well over the past over 100 years. Not really much to touch on here. This is the 5-step process. Let's say you need a job done. Let's say you need a roof done. First thing we do is we come out on site and take a look at the project. We would walk the job in person. You have the ability to either choose a contractor from the list of the 29 contractors that got awarded in Region 2, in your region, or you can ask us who we'd recommend. Some folks like to ask us who we'd recommend because let's say you want someone who's local. We can let you know, hey, this person has a PM or superintendent that's in the area, or you have a special a type of project. Hey, you need a rubber roof. Well, these guys are really good at that compared to one of the other 29 that are on this list. Okay, so for your region, you have 29 contractors. You can pick from one of them when it comes time to actually looking at a job. Once we get out on site, we take a look at the project. The Gordian team and the contractor puts together a detailed scope of work. If you have a detailed scope of work already, fantastic. If not, we'll put that together, or a narrative scope, whatever you'd prefer. We'll get that approved by you. Then we'll pull up the task catalog for your region, and the contractor will go in. I think everybody here has seen it, a line item proposal that breaks down the exact number of quantities and the exact materials that they need to get that job done. Those prices include the cost to install or demolish, and it's a full pricing, whether it takes them, like I said, 2 extra days, 2 extra weeks because of snow or whatever to get the job done. That is what they have agreed to. Then we'll review it once or twice or as many times as we need to make sure that everything's appropriate. We can say, hey, Jim said he'd be providing the dumpsters. Why do you have dumpsters in the proposal? We can have them remove that. And then from there, you get that in your hands and you can say, yes, we'd like to move forward. No, we wouldn't. Or, hey, let's value engineer. Let's de-scope the work, whatever the case may be. Typically, like I said, this process from step 1 to you having that packet in your hands is about 2 to 3 weeks. So when you compare that to a traditional bid process, you're looking at getting work started fairly quickly. So this is some of my recommended next steps for the city. The piggyback agreement's already executed. We've already developed scopes for some of the projects. We've reviewed them, making sure they align with your contract requirements. If you're looking to get any of that work approved, feel free to move it forward to the next step. If you have any questions about changing materials, value engineering, de-scoping, increasing the scope, we're happy to talk through that with you as well. And then I'm going to skip through this. State and local proof points, 500 local governments, not only across the country, but we work internationally as well now. So over the past 5 years, 1.6 billion in construction volume, I'm gonna skip through this. These are Gordian, Maryland customers. Some notable ones are Carroll Community College, Carroll County, as well as Thurmont, which we actually just started working with them about last month. And Carroll County Public Schools. So we're really like Carroll County is what I'm trying to get at. So we'd love to work with you all as well. But that's really all I've got, and I'll take questions.
The costs you say are based per region. Now, there's working in Anne Arundel or Baltimore or Hartford. Is that reflected in your prices, or is it just one price fits all?
The prices are the same within the region. However, they are updated every year. So they actually just got updated in October, and they were reflected accordingly. That is just how the state of Maryland wanted to split it up. That was not up to Gordian. That's how DGS wanted to set up their program.
And mentioned sometimes 2 to 3 week turnaround is important, and sometimes it's not. What would be, would it be possible maybe to include Gordian in our request for pricing and open it up to other contractors too, and then compare what we get, or what done? You'd either do it one way or the other.
That's a great question. I'll answer in two parts. Thank you for that. So we typically try to get proposals turned around in 2 to 3 weeks. That's based on the average of about a job that be about average size of Maryland jobs, $250,000. Anything that around that number is about 2 to 3 weeks of a turnaround. Anything less than that, like if we're doing like just painting an interior room, it's $5,000, $10,000 or $100,000. We can probably get that turned around for you in less than 2 weeks in terms of getting you a proposal. We worked with Calvert County Parks and Rec. It was a $4.5 million purchase order. I mean, that took us like a month to put together. You know, it kind of all depends on the size and scope of the job. We typically don't compete in the bidding process. The reason for that is the point of job order contracting is for projects where the bidding process doesn't make sense. So if you are putting things out to bid, you know, feel free to continue doing that for the projects where it makes sense. But let's say there's a time-sensitive job or a renovation where it's more time, energy, and effort from you guys and your team to put together a bid and wait 6 months. That's something that you'd call us
Wouldn't be
for.
interested in us sending out an RFP, for example, and collecting all our bids and then say, hey, let's see what Gordian can do.
Yeah, we do not like to put ourselves out there as an estimating service. We're like, hey, if you need this project completed, like let's say you guys needed boilers, right? It's December, it's supposed to snow tonight here. When I was sitting in my car, I was listening to the radio station, hear them talking about the snow. And if you needed boilers right now, would you really have time to put a bid package together and put it on the street and advertise it and then collect 3 bids and grade them? And you'd be freezing at the next meeting. So that's an example where job order contracting makes sense, and we'd love to come in and, you know, show you what we're capable of. Now, I will say this: if there is a specific project in mind that you'd like us to take a look at, let us know. There's been times where people will put projects out and they get 3 or 4 bids and they aren't quality, or they're honest, quite frankly, like too high or whatever it is. And they're like, okay, we can't do this through traditional means. Let's have the Gordian guys look at it. Or we're open to that, but not, hey, we're going to have you guys come out, price this up, and then we're going to, you know, put this out on the street.
So, I didn't know you guys owned the RS Means catalog. So, essentially, you're taking the regionally adjusted RS Means guide and just using that for unit costing.
No, I actually got a slide about that in here. I'll show So these are the differences between the construction task catalog and the RS means data from Gordian. The most important being the pricing specificity. So RS means pricing catalog, been around since the 1920s, over 100 years. The costs are calculated using national averages, labor, materials, equipment, and then it can be adjusted to about 970 different regions in the US. The pricing specificity for the construction task catalog is actually a little bit more specific because we not only use RS means data, but we actually have a team of cost estimators that will come up with pricing for that specific region that the client wants. So it's not based on, you know, national averages or anything like that. It is.
And then, so with that, so once you have your 270,000 or whatever it is line items, then as I understand it, contractors then price with an adjustment factor.
Yes.
So when I looked at the estimate for the roof and I see that 1.38,
Yep.
it means that the actual price is 38% higher than your unit prices.
1.38, yes. Yep, and that's specific to each trade. So you can have the same company that does general construction and does electrical, and they have two different factors. That factor could also be for prevailing wage or non-prevailing wage, working hours, non-normal working
Understand.
hours. So,
I get it.
yeah.
Then the thing for me though is when I look at the roof proposal that you all did, everything was on a 1.38 factor.
Yep, exactly.
Who determined the quantities and how were those quantities determined?
Yep, so the factor will typically, should all be the same, right? Because if all the work is being done during normal hours and it's all, you know, non-prevailing wage, it should kind of all be the same. If you're installing or demolishing everything for that project between, you know, 9 and 5 and it's not prevailing wage, it should all be the same.
That's just the markup, right?
Yeah.
That's, well, I mean, it's not really, it's, as I understand it, it's not markup per se, it's what the subcontractors bid as a factor based on the catalog of unit prices that you have. Am I right there?
But that includes their
That
overhead
includes their
and
markup. I mean, I understand all that.
Exactly, yeah,
I'm not, that's not the question. You know, my question is, like I said, we had, I don't know how many pages there were to that, but everything was on a 38%, on a 1.38 factor or 38% markup on the prices that were in your catalog, which one would have thought would have already included overhead and profit in those items.
Well, overhead and profit varies by.
Well, that varies by contractor, and I understand that. But, so, I'm trying to understand a little bit about process here.
Okay.
So if a contractor wants to, if you had two roofing contractors that wanted to bid on our roof, if one had a 0.32 markup and one had a 0.38 markup, would you take the point, is that kind of, how do you determine what contractor gets that work?
That's a great question. So it's up to you. What we typically do is we'll ask you if you'd like to pick somebody from the list of the approved contractors in your region, and we're happy to just choose the one with the lowest factor or the cheapest price. But typically what most people do, and what folks did in this scenario, is ask us who we'd recommend, because we can give you a better idea of, hey, does this person have a super PM that lives, you know, down the street in Thurmont, and can they be here every day in person, versus someone who is based in Northern Virginia, and yeah, they're going to give you the cheapest factor, but you know, they're a little bit further away. Is there a specific type of roof that you need? The reason we went with Dynamic is they're the same roofer that the Department of General Services used, and they actually recommended them to us for a new client because they were so impressed. So that's why we wanted to offer them to
And
you.
I have nothing to say one way or the other. I don't know Dynamic. I've never been around them. I don't.
Me either.
It's not a name. It's not a name I know.
Yeah, this is my first project with them, but the person in charge of construction and energy at the Department of General Services was the one who recommended them, and we want to make sure you guys got a good experience. That's why we went with them.
Let's get back to the quantities. You sent a proposal that had a lot of stuff in it. And a lot of individual quantities. Who measures all that? How does that get proofed in the end so that we're not paying for where there's 500 square feet of pointing masonry in here and maybe they only did 150?
Yep.
Verifies that, and how does that get, how does that credit or any overage get, back to the contractor?
Yep, so that's a fantastic question and one we get all the time. So it works two ways. Let me go back to this really quick. So when the contractor puts together their pricing proposal in step 3, on step 4, someone from Gordian will review it to make sure the quantities look accurate, or accurate as they can be for a job that, like you said, we don't know much about. And we will go back and forth with them, like I said, 2, 3, 4 times. And then once it gets to you, you also get to take a look at it. Now, when the job is completed, if there is any, or not even when it's completed, when it's in progress, if there is something that deserves a credit, we can credit that back to you. If there's something that needs to be adjusted, you can order a supplemental, and we'll go through the same 5-step process while it'll come out on site. Okay? The other piece of that is, if it's something like, like if you need 100 screws in this room and we give you 98, we're not going to do anything about that. But at the same time, if there is, a piece of a wall that needed 2 extra screws, and it's somewhere else in the proposal,
Well, I mean,
you'll
it's like
get
the
that.
variation estimate quantities clause in the state,
Yeah.
you got some percentage on either side of that.
Yeah, no one's
now-
gonna-
And,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pinch pennies here, but.
That's okay.
For example, in the proposal that you sent over, there were 2 sets of scaffolding.
Right.
One of which was enough to cover this building and scaffolding all the way around to a height of 24 feet. Now, if you walk outside and you look at this building, you can't put scaffolding all the way around this building.
Right.
Can't put anything over here. You're not putting anything in my driveway, and it's not really necessary on this side because you got the flat roof to work off of over here. So, yeah, scaffolding and sidewalk protection out front, I get it. But that's not what was in the proposal. And what was in the proposal was not just the one time to do that, it was in there twice. Same thing with a man lift. Yep, you're gonna need a man lift because you can't get scaffolding over here, so you got to use a man lift.
Got to use a man lift. Yep.
But there were 2 in 2 different places, and that stuff totaled out to be like $60,000 or $70,000.
Yep. And the beautiful part of that is we're happy to talk to you about that. And if you want a value engineer, we can sit down and look through that proposal.
My
go
point
through it,
is that that's why we're supposed to be using you, so that you do that. We shouldn't have to do that.
Just to check, you were saying that they can't come back with change orders on the projects once they accept it? Is that what you were saying?
Yep.
So do they overcompensate materials to make sure they can't come back for change order, if that makes sense?
No, that's one of the things that the only time they can order a supplemental is if there is something that, like, if we were doing interior reno and we knock this wall down and we find a bunch of mold that we didn't know about before, we have to ask you and get it approved, and then we can come out on site and even look at a supplemental.
Right, I mean, I get that. I mean, these things happen. This is a 100-year-old building, but just some of the items in that proposal seem to be over the top to me.
Yeah, and I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of the scaffolding. I am by no means a scaffolding expert, and I'm not going to pretend to be and try to give
Neither
you
am
an
I,
answer.
but I mean, when they give you a number of 100 cubic feet of scaffolding, it's not hard to figure out what that number is.
Right, but what I can do is I can have Rich Astle and Luke Reinhardt, the 2 folks that combined, I think they have 50 years of construction experience. They're the ones that actually do that. I don't review the proposals. I can have them sit down and we can chat through whatever changes that you'd like to take a look at, and they can sure justify why they did not have that in there. I know they reviewed that proposal a couple times before they sent it out to you, so if it's in there, there's a good reason for it. And I can have them, send you over some information on why it is, or if you'd like to change it, we can discuss changing it.
Well, you know, like I said, I mean, I understand, and, you know, when it came time to seal this roof back up because we had a problem, obviously, absolutely, yeah, because we used Gordian, right, to come out here, and didn't that, how that happened?
Right, the contractor that came out did do the temporary
Right,
repair.
and that was
yes.
under the JOC, or was that?
No, he just did that because he felt bad.
They did not bill us for that.
Oh. But, I mean, I can understand where that would be someplace where you would use this process, because you don't have time to wait, the roof leaks.
Yep.
You know, but when that's stabilized and you have a little bit of time to look at it, you know, and I just made a cursory look through the estimate. And just to give you some background, estimating project management is what I do.
Yep.
So when I look at an estimate like that and I see things that look duplicative to me and costs that look high to me and I'm now understanding where your data comes from, to me, that's just and you know, I'm 40 years of being a hard bid guy, right? So it strikes me wrong. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that I have a healthy.
Hey, and I completely understand that you have a ton of experience, and that makes sense.
I'm done beating you up.
Yeah,
I
to me,
appreciate
it was
it.
really more about
Yeah.
the program
And
overall
and you've
than-
answering my
than-
questions. I
than,
mean,
yeah.
these are the questions that I had when I first saw the proposal. So
That's okay. Usually I sit here and no one says anything, and then I leave, so this is way better than that.
I'm done. Thank you.
Dynamic, they're the same ones who did the patchwork, right? So, I mean, they have a decent idea of what the scope of the overall job is.
I think after the question arose about the scaffolding, yeah, I think there was an initial response, and we hadn't intended to really delve into the roofing proposal this evening, so.
No,
you know,
and yeah, with that, yeah,
speaking
that
off
can
the
go
cuff, but,
to a.
my understanding was
Until-
that it was listed under both cupola and the
Yes.
the
Right, exactly, and that's what I'm talking about.
And,
It's like there was scaffolding listed under the cupola,
I-
but it's like,
right.
why is that different from the scaffolding that's there for the roof?
So I think it was, you know, up to a certain point was, you know, for the roof and such, and then it's like an additional level of scaffolding, and the higher you go, the pricier it gets. That was my understanding of how it was broken out into two.
However, you're not
segments.
gonna, where the cupola is, you're not gonna reach from scaffolding, you're gonna do that from a lift,
Just to,
practical standpoint.
I mean, we have that until what, the end of this month, right? Are you able just to kind of reach out about the scaffolding before Monday?
Certainly get some.
Yeah, I know, again, I know this wasn't particularly about the roofing part, but again, just because I know we are running out of time if this is something we're considering for that. All right,
I
again,
don't wanna tie up any more of the meeting
yeah,
with
sorry,
details
sorry
about
to
that
take
stuff.
you off.
Yeah, I mean, this is just for whatever projects you have coming down the line.
Right, and I understand you wanted us to understand what the process was, because it kind of came out of left field at us with this, you know, big unit price thing that came at us. Thank you for,
Job order contracting is confusing. I mean, you know, like when I started here, I was telling Jim earlier, I had somewhat of a construction background, but hadn't really worked with too many IDIQ contracts. And it's, you know, so it's not something that you hear every day or talk about at home. And so I wanted to make sure that everyone's got a good understanding of how the process works.
It's a good process for expedited contracts, for sure.
Yeah, if it's the right type
right,
of
if
project.
you have that need to be
Yeah, if you have the
expedited,
need
but if
for
you
it.
don't have that need to be expedited, you should be, to me, you should be a little more penny wise with your.
Expense of developing a bid specification
Right,
or
right.
design,
Yes.
you know, may not be the most practical approach.
Right, you know, if you're gonna save $50,000, you don't wanna put that back in to spend to a engineer, because then you haven't saved anything.
Well, something that actually works well with the design is folks will typically have the design done through job order contracting, and then when it's, you know, through whatever design firm you want to work with, but because it's through job order contracting, when it's like 75 or 80% of the way there, not only are they happy because they didn't have to make it biddable, they can make it buildable, so they usually build the specs a lot faster. But we can already start pricing out some of the construction for you before it's even done, because it's like 80% done, and we can pretty much have it done quicker than that 2 or 3 week turnaround. And then let's say the pricing from us is too much. Well, you still own the design, you paid for it. So that's another way to spin it around. That a lot of people like to do. The program is meant to be moldable to your needs. You know,
That was that second one, right, where it showed, where you had the design? Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Thermont, for example, I mean, they were working with federal dollars, and they needed them encumbered. So we worked on a blanket purchase order for for a few different projects all at once, with the scopes in there. And then they can draw down against that as they like. That's an option you have. I mean, there's a number of ways to work in job order contracting and get the projects done. I mean, yeah. At the end of the day, we're all here on the same team, right? To get the work done for the people. So.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns from council? And thank you, appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Next up, we have council member statement regarding conflicts of interest on agenda items. Would any council members like to make a statement? Hearing none, proceeding down, public comment pertaining to non-agenda items. Do we have any public comment pertaining to non-agenda items? Hearing none, proceeding down, resolutions, ordinances, and agreements. Resolution 2024-15, water allocation for December. Questions, comments, concerns by council? Hearing none, proceeding down. Resolution 2024-16, fee schedule for 2025. Questions, comments, concerns by council?
Are these the same fees from last year, or have we raised?
There are no changes proposed at this point.
Last time we changed.
It's been quite a few years. I think the last time we might have added some specific zoning categories or something like that. So we had talked several years ago about possibly raising some of the fees, and at the time there was no appetite from council to do so. So we've pretty much been leaving them. There are some fees that probably are due to be revisited.
Yeah.
But
Meter
I
reading
think
fee,
that,
$15 probably doesn't cover it.
and some of the zoning certificate fees, for example, we spend more than $5, between the time we review, say, a fence or a deck application, and then go out and, for the items that we do inspect that the county doesn't, small sheds, fences, things like that, we're spending way more than $10 in staff time to process the application, issue the permit, take the money, and then go out and inspect it when it's done. But as I said, that it's been that case for a while. But if I would suggest, if there is any interest to revisiting the fee schedule, perhaps we do that as part of our budget process in the coming year. And maybe we make, I know we'd like to adopt it, year by year. But if there is appetite, we can kind of delve into some of them in a little more detail and think about it maybe to adopt at the beginning of the next fiscal year.
Be included in the budget process. I
I
think we need to look at those. I looked at those fees and they seemed awful familiar. Now, I can't say that I remember what they were from 5 years ago. But I don't think they've been done for the,
Well, especially
since I've been mayor, so.
for a deck or a shed or pool, our zoning certificate fee is $5. If we have to actually send somebody out to take a look at it, we're losing money every time Daryl goes out the door. And considering that they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on these units, I don't see any reason we couldn't up that fee a little bit and try to recover our cost. Not that I'm in favor of, trying to balance budgets on the backs of people's fee schedule, but we ought to be at least recovering our costs in the matter.
I come up with, some recommendations as we go through the budget process.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns? None, proceeding down, city manager report, Jim.
Running through the standard items, capital equipment, our vac truck is expected to be here in January. Our next utility truck is at the upfitter. Saw some photos of it today, so we should be getting that by the end of the month. Police vehicles, finally caught up on police vehicles. You may recall we struggled and weren't able to get police vehicles for a very long time, and we actually switched the make of vehicles because of that. Kind of a happy item this month that a couple Ford Explorers became available, and we were scheduled to have 2 more vehicles, so we will be caught up once those are all through the upfitter. Having some challenges with getting that turned around right now, to get all the extra lights and equipment upfitted to some of the vehicles. But at least we've got the cars that we couldn't get for, this will be the first year in a long time we haven't had to roll the purchase of police vehicles into the next year because we just couldn't get them. No updates on the next couple items, Charter and Code or Roberts Mill. We got a couple more signatures on the Riffles Lane storm drain, and the only one that remains is one that we have to do grading on the property, but the actual storm drain will not be located on the property. So I'm hoping we might be able to talk that property owner into more of a right of entry than a formal easement, that maybe they'll be more receptive or responsive to that. And hopefully, we'll get that going within the next month. Let's see, the FY24 sewer rehabilitation, if you've headed out of town on the west end of town, you've driven across the patch on Route 140. So the contractor's finished with the new manholes and the realignment of the sewer under the state highway, and has already moved out of that area. And they've kind of juggled the schedule a little bit to avoid being in the area of the tree lighting for this weekend. So they're kind of jumping, to different sections to keep that area of the park as tidy as they can until after the tree lighting's done, and then they'll jump back to that section. But that work is progressing very nicely. Everything's been on schedule, and the contractor's been very, very good to work with thus far. Have a couple other items that have come up since the packets went out. I had emailed everybody about this, I think, last week. There's a home on Harney Road that has a failing septic system. And for those who have been around for a few years, we encountered this with some properties on Stumptown Road, where the health department wanted them to connect to the city sewer. So since we have a policy of not extending water and sewer services outside of the city limits at this time, we would want them to annex in order to connect. So if there are concerns about that, please feel free to share them with me now. But Monday, I would like to, look for a motion and vote to direct staff to develop an annexation agreement to bring the house, bring the home into the city limits so they can connect.
Which home is that?
It's 3300 Harney Road. It's the last, if you're heading out of the city, it's the last ranch home on the left before you get.
Oh, that's the one that just is for sale now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's kind of what prompted all of this.
Right.
They had the health
Probably
department
had an
came out and did
inspection,
an
it
inspection.
failed, yeah.
Is it just the house, or is there acreage with the property?
I think it's like,
It's a,
it's just
just
a
a
lot,
parcel
it's just a
lot.
it's
residential
not,
lot.
right, it's not a large amount of acreage. It's not like anything that's subdividable, so it's just one existing house. So the traffic is already being generated, the school capacity is already being used.
This has been talked about for some time, hasn't it?
Um,
I remember a conversation years ago about this.
there
There
are.
were 3 or 4 properties out there that on this,
There's, so prior to the policy of not extending services outside of the city, there were properties that were connected to water or sewer or sometimes both. Houses
Or
along
annex.
Harney Road are on the left side of Harney Road leaving town are, once you get past Sobel's Inn, which is now Recovery 180, the houses are not within city limits, but Most of, I guess, the first 4 are served by definitely city sewer, if not both sewer and water. It's come to our attention a few times because in the past, the city has cleaned the private lateral that serves those homes and connects to a city main. And several years back, the city said, this is, a private lateral that you're on, we'll maintain it from the main on, but anything on your side of the main, you have to maintain just like any other private home would. So there was talk of possibly bringing them in, and if the Sewell property does develop, perhaps the carrot there would be you can get rid of your private line and connect to the main when the Sewell farm develops or something like that, at which point we would,
Should we
ask
dangle
them to
that carrot in
annex.
front of all of those houses on that strip?
So certainly that would be beneficial for the city. I don't know if that's a reasonable ask for the home that has the failing system right now to make their annexation incumbent on other individuals choosing to annex or not. So
Annex each property individually?
we could.
Just kind of pursue each one individually? Where does the main end? Is there a manhole at which it stops and then
So-
everything else is like on a house connection?
There is a manhole across the street at, I think it's like the 3rd house from the end, maybe the 4th house from the end. So apparently, my understanding is the last few houses on the right-hand side of the road as you leave town have private force mains up to a manhole from which, at that point then, it's gravity flow back into the rest of the system. So there's not a manhole like all the way out at the very last house. The main stops shy of that.
When you go further, it has to go the other way because the topography goes downhill, and so there's nowhere for it to go.
Right, so the apartments, for example, that are behind the single-family homes have a private pumping, grinder pump to get up to the point where gravity flow can go, and so do those last couple of houses. So this house, 3300, would, in all likelihood, have to have a private force main to pump the sewage up to the point where it can gravity flow. So they would, if there's,
They have to run that in the street,
they would have to cross the street.
across the street, but not run it up along or... We don't need to
Yeah,
bog down the
right,
details,
right.
but
I'm not, because the homes on that side of the street are served by a private lateral, if they worked out some agreement to share that lateral with one more house, I suppose they could do that. Connect directly to the city
I mean,
system.
because they don't want to spend any more money than they have to because they're trying to sell a house.
So Monday I'll be looking for, a more formal action to, start developing an annexation agreement and start having those conversations with the property owner and their representatives. So we got that one. Just wanted to touch base on Main Street real quick. Are there any preferences on, we know we're going to be having some Main Street conversations for the next couple months at least. Do we want to tackle that like in the sequence of the letter of agreement with the state, the kind of the sequence that Mish laid things out last month, or are there areas specifically that council would like to tackle, as more of a priority rather than going through it the way the letter of agreement flows? If there are no preferences, we'll probably just do it in the sequence that Mish presented things and just try to knock out, item by item to make sure we're addressing the letter of agreement with the state.
I'd say letter of agreement with state, and then make sure we're hitting all the markers for it.
Okay, so we'll proceed that way. So probably starting next month, we'll put, a couple of those items that we wanted council to weigh in on for discussion each month for the next couple, maybe few months.
Would it be wise to try to prioritize the items in that report? In other words, what I'm thinking about would it be wise maybe for council to review that in detail individually and then come with a top three or something like that and then tackle them in that order?
That's what I'm asking is, would you rather do it that way or, yeah, so we're open to do it either way. You know, but
I think if we just start from the beginning and go to the end, it'll take us forever to do that. But if we would come up with priorities individually, everybody submit their priorities, and chances are, many of our priorities are the same, so it would, the stuff that needs to get addressed first would be on top of the list, and the stuff that was less important to be addressed would be on the bottom of the list. And my concern about all along has been this dragging this out. And I just think that we go in with a set of priorities rather than, that was a very nice report, it was a very meaty report. There was a lot of information in there. I'm not sure I still have digested it all, but I think if we could come in with, I don't know whether it's a top three or the top one or the top five, I don't care what number you pick. But if we did that, we would be able to take
I think one of the,
affirmative action for an action plan rather than talk about something for 20, for an hour in a council meeting and then decide it's not worth doing right now, we'll postpone that. I mean,
well, I'll ask if council would, maybe revisit the report that Mish emailed out for those discussion points for council, and perhaps Monday night we can, have this on for some discussion, and then if, we can come to concurrence on maybe the first three, areas of recommendation that we want to focus on, we can certainly tackle it that way.
one of the things that we talked about last month was to maybe have a special meeting, and that would be certainly an open session meeting, to talk about how we want to attack this, whether we want to, and to talk about whether we want to, and because obviously I don't think we've digested enough of it to know whether we want to go item by item or want to pick priorities. We really probably don't, we're not ready to answer that question right now anyway, are we?
Well, my only worry is we end up debating priorities and wasting time when we could have just started the sequence.
And there's something to be said for that, but I think we ought to, I think we ought to do that, and I think we ought to, not bog down a council meeting for that, and that's, this is important enough, I think, to do something, in the same way that the planning commission is handling the comp plan.
And in our discussions between Director Mishi and myself, just at the staff level, we kicked around, do we start with the, what might be the item that might have the longest timeline, kind of the critical path idea, that if we want to have, say, 80% of the rules and, operating guidelines in place before another board is seated, maybe that becomes our priority, because that may take a longer period of time to nail down, what we want, what the responsibilities of each committee is going to be, if we do modify what's on the National Main Street Center, for example. But maybe setting up those, what, if anything, needs to be in the code versus what is going to be set by resolution, and then nail down those operating procedures. So then we could maybe start recruitment efforts for board members. Maybe we could be doing that while we're working out some of the other details, if we get the framework in place first. So those are some of the things that we discussed, and then, leading up to the workshop, it was like, well, let's see what council thinks. Do they want to go through it, A, B, C, D, or pick, what they think is the biggest priority to focus on to start with. So
Should that be our homework assignment for Monday
So
night, is to come prepared with how we want to discuss how we want to attack it?
I think,
Homework to do.
that's, hopefully we can have some discussion Monday night on that then. We kind of touched on the City Hall roof and exterior repairs project a bit earlier, but we did reach out to another contractor who's been working on an estimate. They didn't have it ready in time for this evening. We're hoping to have it Monday. So I would like to put the topic on Monday's agenda in anticipation that we will have a second estimate, at which point, assuming we do get the other estimate, perhaps we can make a decision between the two proposals. As I said, it's not in hand yet, but I'd rather put it on the agenda and have to pull it off if we don't get the proposal than try to add it, you know, Monday at 3 o'clock or something. So. And the last thing, also, this just came in after the council packets went out. We're ready to execute EVAPCO's Public Works agreement for their parking lot project, where they demolish the homes on the opposite side of Allendale Lane from the headquarters building. But we don't yet have the bond or the construction surety. So Monday night, I would like to, if council's willing to authorize the mayor to execute the Public Works agreement when we do receive the surety. I touched base with the city attorney who drafted the PWA. He was comfortable with moving forward that way. So assuming the surety comes in, you know, next Wednesday, we can go ahead and let EVAPCO get started with their permits rather than having to wait until February meeting to approve the Public Works agreement. So the PWA has been reviewed by the city attorney. He actually drafted it. And the city engineers okayed the dollar amounts in there and everything. So really, we're just waiting for EVAPCO to provide the bond. So that'll be on for Monday night as well. And that's about it for me, unless somebody has questions.
Questions, comments, concerns, council?
Yes. I have gotten a number of comments from various businesses in the downtown area. And Director Misch put the ad that he placed in the Gettysburg Times in the report. And I had not seen this before, but if you look at this ad, it looks like there are two businesses in Taneytown. I have a very long list of things here that I want to talk about that come out of this, because frankly, it feeds into the Main Street discussion, and we ought to be thinking a little harder about what we're doing. You know, we placed an ad in the Gettysburg Times in a town that has dozens, if not 100 businesses in their downtown that, you know, are the kinds of things that people would want to go shop a small business Saturday for. And we put out an ad that looks like we have two businesses. And we put it in a paper that serves a community of 100,000 people. And it seems like that was a bit of a waste. So in my question, I have a number of questions, and this, I have to bear with me because I'm going to go through all of this. So, did we use Main Street money to buy this ad? And if we are using Main Street money to buy an ad, why are we buying an ad that promotes two businesses and not the 20-odd that are actually in our downtown? The other thing that was mentioned to me by definitely much more than one person was the entire Small Business Saturday activity thing. Almost none of the businesses in downtown, certainly none of the ones that I talked to, were actually invited to participate. Ambassadors actually invited themselves because they happened to have a face painter who came into their store and said, "Oh, sure, I'd like to do that." And Paul Cluth went to Jay Mishi and said volunteered to do that, but before that had not been contacted, from what I understand, from what Paul told me directly. I talked to several other of our mainstay businesses on Main Street who were not contacted at all. And so my question is, why not? Where were the American Express kits? Where are the county passports? When the flyer came out, it had a slightly revised map, and there were two more businesses on it, Ambassadors being one, and Taneytown Family Barbershop, because they were having the hair tinsel thing like they had done the previous year. There are 18 other businesses in downtown Taneytown that were simply left out. Little or no advance promotion. I saw one Facebook post, and that was from a private citizen. I never saw hardly anything about it. The flyers weren't even distributed, from my understanding, until Saturday morning. There was supposed to be music at the parking lot here by City Hall and the band playing at the tree lighting. I don't know about the tree lighting. I didn't make it down there. We had a late arriving guest, and so I was not able to make it down there. But I know that the music didn't happen in here. You know, I hope that those people got paid for you know, blocking out their schedule and being ready to do it. I don't know what, and again, I don't know if that was Main Street money and how that was handled. But this feeds back to the entire set of issues that surrounded the Main Street board and the problems that we were having. You know, there's no opportunity for input. We are spending Main Street funds with no authorization or accountability. And this continues. And talk about wanting to recruit new people for the board. Everybody knows what's going on. This is not any kind of secret. So I find it difficult to believe you're going to get a whole lot of volunteerism for this, you know, given how things are being handled. One of the things in Director Mishi's report was that there have been some, and this is getting away now, a little bit away from the Small Business Saturday, but not entirely. We've put new plantings in front of the police station and in front of City Hall and in front of the annex. You know, were these Main Street funds that did this? And if so, why was this done only on the public buildings and not for the merchants? Because Main Street is for the merchants, it's not for the city. You know, the term slush fund has been batted around, and when we see things like this, that's where your mind goes. Main Street funds that are supposed to be there to help the businesses used to gussy up city buildings instead? We have kind of going a little deeper into some of the issues that are out there. We've given a large grant to what is essentially a seasonal business with a small footprint, while Director Mishi continues his personal warfare with the Stevensons. So we give $27,000 to a business, and I'm not faulting Red Truck for accepting the grant.
I'm a little confused. What warfare with the Stevensons?
Please.
No, I would like you to explain it. If you're gonna say that here, I'd like you to explain it.
So for the past 3 years, Director Mishi has done pretty much everything in his power to trying to find the right word, because subvert isn't it, but something close to that. But it is common knowledge, at least it is for those of us who see it happening, that, there have been things said, go back to the Main Street meetings and some of the things that were said to Mrs. Stevenson. I think that his actions in that regard speak for themselves. One of the things that they have, talked about doing is open an ice cream shop. And so here the city turns around and gives $27,000 to somebody else to open an ice cream shop. Yes, they did, because they were given $27,000 to do it, to help them do it.
They could have applied for the same grant.
What grant? What process?
Was that not through the facade improvements?
Right, that was the building improvement program, so.
So,
And I know they know about that grant. Here's what I will say, is I have received text messages from some of those people basically saying I need to get on board with their Main Street vision, to the point where I've had a text from those exact same people saying that I don't know what's coming for me. So again, the idea that what is your actual, I don't know, to say a city employee is waging war against a business. And then again, you haven't really said anything that signifies that to me, other than you're mad that somebody else got a grant for an ice cream shop because your friend didn't get it.
I will find out about the, assumption is that yes, it was probably through the map. My understanding is the map was intended to promote the events, the activities that were featured on Small Business Saturday. So, of course, could that ad have looked different? Certainly, but I think it was, and the one that went in the newspaper, I believe, was published before, or was submitted before ambassadors offered to use face for the face painter. So, that was updated in-house and circulated by social media before Saturday. So, kind of a scramble to get that, but.
You can't fit 18 businesses on that map.
No, but when you open and just look at this, it looks like there are 2 businesses in town. I mean, this doesn't look like anything that shows any kind of why would I spend my time to go there? So, it's like, oh, well, they're having this, but there's only 2 places to go to actually do any shopping, and one of them is a cake shop, so how much do I really need there? And I'm I'm not sure what's at this other one. You know, I just don't think that this was a good expenditure. I don't think it was I think it did more harm than good. I think that speaks to issues that we had about not having any kind of input or plan. Like something that was kind of just put out there. You have a couple of your mainstay businesses here on the street that weren't invited to even be part of this. You know, we at George's on York, we did the wreath thing last year at our place, along with some of the other things that were done. Nobody ever even contacted us or asked us about it. And like I said, I know that that is true for a number of the other businesses, and you know, my question is why?
I imagine the band part, though, had to have been to the 20-degree weather.
Yeah, well, and I understand that. I'm not saying
saying,
that wasn't the right thing
I'm
to
just
do
trying to think the
cancel it.
solution for the band part is probably
Yeah.
the 20-degree weather.
Right, and I'm not saying it wasn't necessarily a bad thing to cancel it because of that. But, you know, if that was your draw along with just two businesses, you know, that's a kind of a disappointment. And, you know, and to me, this speaks to the things that we need to do to get Main Street right, is to address this so that we're not, shouldn't be leaving anybody behind in this.
We also shouldn't be
I don't-
attacking businesses that are here, like the ice cream shop. I think that's
I'm not-
very unfair, that a business owner took their time to apply for a grant and got it and was successful and employed people in this town, and we're attacking them because they did it first. Like, that just doesn't sit well with me. But
Not only that, again, trust me, the map's not the Main Street's issues. My personal opinion, Main Street issues are businesses not being open. But that's a topic for another time.
Well, and that's, you know, some of the discussion that needs to happen around Main Street. But the issue is that if we can't draw people here, then, you know, the reason the businesses aren't open is because there's no one there to come to them. So, you know, we have some, you know, and there's a chicken and egg thing to that, but it seems as though we aren't doing the best we can for them.
I will agree that we certainly need to address our Main Street program and start moving forward on it so that we can get people in place to develop things that will benefit all the business downtown, and having more participation in that can only help.
do we have an updated list of businesses that participated in the survey? Because all these businesses that want to be included in stuff, I feel like didn't do what we asked them to do. So there's two sides to this coin.
I think we did send that out after last month's presentation. I think we did send out the survey details, but if not, I'll make sure that they do get circulated.
Okay.
And I will say, I mean, I know there's a couple businesses that don't want to get involved in all the drama that is related to the Main Street.
Well, and you know, I'm
Ice
going
cream
from
shop.
recollection here, but I believe that there were a couple of businesses that specifically said they did not want to be involved in Main Street activities going forward because of what had happened, you know, there were concerns about, you know, the fact that we couldn't get a monthly financial report that everybody could agree on as far as, you know, the level of detail, or, you know, there were some businesses that said, I want to step back. I don't want to be involved in Main Street stuff. And that may be a factor as to why some businesses weren't contacted. I have not spoken to Director Mishi about, how he went about reaching out to businesses to gauge their interest for activities. I certainly did hear some criticism Saturday from a business that wasn't on the map. But again, I think the map was identifying where the activities were. And, hindsight, woulda, coulda, shoulda, could it have, should it have said, and come visit our other downtown businesses and perhaps given a list. Certainly there are things that could have been done differently. I will not argue that at all. And we have an active Main Street group that's helping to develop these, instead of one individual, it's going to be a better process going forward, I think. But given that we don't have a functioning board and volunteer group at this point in time, the choice really is we do nothing until that's back in place, or we try to kind of keep the lights on and do a little something to keep some level of interest and support going. So, I won't disagree that what we're doing now is not ideal, but I think it's better than doing absolutely nothing. And for those who have been around for a while, may recall that after about 2017 or so, our Main Street program kind of fizzled, and our economic development director basically kept the lights on, so to speak, even though there hadn't been regular board meetings, there hadn't been committees active. It was pretty much the economic development director trying to keep things moving and bring people in when they could, and keep the program afloat while we were struggling with getting a board to meet regularly. And there were some problems years ago pre-COVID, and we've just been trying to kind of keep things happening downtown to some degree, while we've been lacking a board that meets regularly and committees that are contributing.
I think that we would be better served at this point in time to let the individual businesses take care of themselves until we get our own house in order. To do things poorly just to say that we did things is not a good plan.
What we have, what we're dealing with, I said this when we had the board dissolved, lack of leadership. It seems to me it would be incumbent on the Main Street manager / economic development director, knowing that there was no formal board to bounce things off of, to take the initiative himself to visit the businesses downtown with suggestions and plans, and get them to weigh in on what they think about them, and then follow the directions that the downtown community provides to them. That's how it was successful in the past. The success we had in Main Street years ago came from the businesses to the council, not from the council to the businesses. And I think the magic of the whole thing is that the Main Street manager / economic development director, and I really see a very gray line between these two because they're the same thing, should be the innovator or the idea person that goes to the businesses with ideas and gets reactions, and then fine-tunes those reactions to achieve results. It seems like he would be trying much harder now that there's not a board to bounce things off of, to bring this community together, this downtown business community together, than it is apparent. I visited with Mish yesterday for an hour or so, and we talked about a lot of things, and one of the things that we talked about was some of his experiences talking with other Main Street managers. One of the good ideas that he mentioned that he heard from Thermon, I believe it was that the manager at that municipality, I don't know whether it was Thermon or not, but I'm just thinking it was, go to businesses and suggest to them things to do. If it were a fixed-up nature, we can help you do that. Or if it's a promotional nature, if it was a painting nature, whatever it happened to be, whatever the issue was, it would be coming from the city to the businesses. We want to help you achieve these goals. How do we do that? What do you need from us? I visited my daughter in Virginia over the Thanksgiving holidays, and she lives in a town called Orange, which is between Charlottesville and Culpeper. And the nearby town named Gordonsville had renovated their Main Street. And I went through there earlier in the month and said I really was impressed with what I saw. And I went back and I spent some time walking Main Street. The Main Street's no bigger than our Main Street. Population-wise, Gordonsville is about 1,500 people compared to what we've got. And the place is fantastic. I mean, it really is an outstanding display of what can happen. My son-in-law, who is prominent in the Orange County community, he's the commercial vice president of a local bank down there. So he gets to talk to a lot of the business people. He says the key to what made this happen in Gordonsville was everybody was signed on to getting this done. I took a bunch of photographs, and I'm going to try to figure out how to send them to everybody before Monday night. And I just want you to look at this and see what it could be when everybody works together. But right now, nobody's working together. And that's the problem. If the Main Street the Main Street manager needs to be a unifier, not a divider. And I don't know how we accomplish that, but that's got to be the goal. The first step that we talk about this wonderful plan. This wonderful plan is not going to work at all unless he's got people to back it. If everybody is opposed to it before they even hear what they have to say about it, we're exercising futility to go over this thing. We've got to get people working together and on the same page and agree to what we want to accomplish, or we're not going to accomplish anything. Everybody's going to just do their own thing. Nobody listens to me. Nobody cares about me. Nobody wants my opinion. Nobody cares about my business. We hear that all the time. So maybe rather than come up with the top 3 things we want to see this report deliver, maybe we ought to just set a time aside, maybe in a month or so, and have a Main Street meeting or just a general economic development meeting. Just talk about what we're going to do. It's part of our comprehensive plan. It's something that the comprehensive plan committee needs to know about. How do we want to see our downtown? What do we want it to look like? What kind of shops do we want there? And I just don't think we're going to get anywhere unless we have leadership unifying this community downtown. Because if everybody's left to their own devices, that's going to be exactly the way it is right now.
You make some very interesting points, and something that I keep circling back to is when we think about the Main Street program, or when you read about it, it's always referred to as this grassroots approach. That and for Taneytown, I think that has always been a challenge for us. I think our efforts to focus on the downtown and improve conditions and kickstart revitalization have all been city-driven or driven by a couple individuals, with the majority of the community being less enthusiastic about getting involved and really driving something. I think it's been almost more of a top-down rather than the bottom-up approach that Main Street is
that's
supposed
where
to
we've
be.
gone. That's where we've gone wrong.
And yet, without
Well,
there
here's
being
the
a city.
here's the perspective from
Okay.
from the business side, and from and obviously I talk to these people all the time, and I know you guys do too. But it's
The perception is not there that's what we want to do. That's the convincing that we need to have. We need to have an individual that business leaders know that, yeah, I know he's going to fight for me before city council. I know that he's going to be my advocate before city council. They're going to help us be successful. And there's nobody on the city council that wants to discourage business from coming downtown. Everybody here wants to do everything we can to get the downtown as lively and as prosperous as it can be. But without leadership, with factions, I guess is the best way to say it,
It's people fighting for
fighting one
control.
another, it's not going to happen.
well, but part of that also is empowerment, and it's the lack of empowerment that I get when I talk to people, that what they say doesn't matter. Nobody came to them and asked them for their opinion. Nobody said, hey, would you like to try this idea? Things come down from on high at them, or they're just simply, their suggestions are ignored. And I would tell you that seems to be a long-standing thing with Taneytown, from people that I talk to just in general, not necessarily businesses here, but business people that I know, and people other places who are familiar with Taneytown. It seems that that's the missing piece, is the empowerment of the businesses to essentially control their fate in this, and not have their fate controlled.
I hear you, but I'm I suppose struggling a little bit with that idea, because I don't feel like the city is standing in anyone's way. And certainly if a couple businesses want to get together and cross promote or do their own promotions, no one is saying they can't do that. And what I'm seeing is that the city not stepping up, doing things to help promote the businesses or things like that, is being, largely criticized. And if we have a Main Street program, that's what we need to be doing, certainly. But I don't think the city is standing in anyone's way from doing what they think their business needs to do.
And Exhibit
to-
A
to
is the ice
thrive.
cream shop that we're attacking.
Well,
They-
again,
The city is not the problem with Main Street.
again, it's not standing in the way, it's encourage, it's, the impression I got from visiting Gordonsville was that municipality provided the stage for success for the downtown businesses. They created an environment where the local businesses flourish. Now, I'd say the the downtown area that I'm talking about is no bigger than our downtown area.
I'd say it's even
And-
smaller.
And I walked the whole thing, and one vacant store. That one vacant store had a Christmas tree in one window. It had a big poster in the other window with a finger pointing, visit our other locations down the street. It had a lot of feel-good, you'll see it when I send you the pictures. But the municipality's job was to create the environment for success. And that's where we're falling short. We say, go do, you do anything you want to do, we'll support you. Well, I'm not sure that's the right attitude. I think we need to provide, this is the stage for success. We need to say, we're going to support doing everything you want to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And then let the businesses take it from there. Then you will have businesses who want to be part of an advisory board. If they know that the city is receptive to a combined and a unified effort from local business people. And I guess that's the impression that I get when I go downtown to Gordonsville. And again, you'll see a lot more of this when.
You know, and I'm not saying that the city is per se standing in somebody's way, but I think when there is a Main Street organization and businesses are looking to that organization for some help and leadership and they aren't seeing it, then that becomes discouraging. So we need, somehow we need to get back to where we're all pulling in the same direction, and right now that's just not what we have. And when you get businesses, Small Business Saturday should have been one of the best days of the year in our downtown for our small businesses. And several of our we only have several anchor small businesses were simply left out of the process.
Yeah, but did they know it was Small Business Saturday? It's always the day of Saturday after Thanksgiving. So they should have been in their shops.
Well, they were.
Having their own thing. And I think that's where the biggest misstep is, that there is this disconnect as to what the guidelines are of what the city is supposed to be actually doing. We are not supposed to be running people's businesses because the last thing they want is for the government involved in their businesses. We are supposed to just be doing things to get people downtown, and then they take the next step and get them into their shop. So even if they did not get an invitation to what was being done, for whatever reason, they should have utilized the opportunity they were given if people were coming downtown. And I'm not saying it was a great success, but we have to stop fighting what that system should be.
Deja Vu had cider and cookies and goodies and stuff in their store, and we did an open house over here. And Paul had the face painter in there on his own initiative to do that.
Did they advertise that? Because I didn't see that advertised anywhere. So that's the problem. Everybody has to do their part. Deja Vu can't wait for someone to advertise for them.
No, but Main Street is supposed to be kind of that clearinghouse that brings those businesses together and that provides that oomph of power for.
But too many businesses are expecting our city to advertise their businesses, and that is not what it is. We're supposed to be getting people to the downtown and creating an environment that's inviting so that those businesses can then take that next step and pull them in. But we've got a history of the people not having the shops open regular hours for whatever reason. And I get it. Having a business is not easy. It's hard. But if there's no cooperation between the city and the businesses, if there is no set guidelines, which is what we're supposed to be trying to accomplish, But then we have to stick by them. We have to stop setting these other precedences where we are going to do something for some businesses and not for others.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's where the problem's coming in. So
And
we've
and
gotta
that's and that
stop
was some of the
that.
feeling that came out of this the other day was that, hey, they're pushing these people's business, but not mine.
And you're right, and that's not something that should be happening, because we shouldn't be
Right. That
pushing
is not for us
anything.
to do.
No. But it's certainly not anything that's gonna get fixed very soon, because it's been years in the works.
Right.
And there's definitely maybe some other things we need to be doing and ideas that we can have, but our main job right now is just to make the guidelines on what the Main Street's job is, and then kind of reeling everybody in and saying, this is what we're doing. We're not doing this, we're not doing that. Yet people have great ideas. Take them to the businesses. It's not for the city to do. And we've got to find out what that separation is.
Small Business Saturday should be the highlight of the year for the businesses on Main Street. It should be the focal point of the whole scheme of promotion for Main Street. And when people feel alienated or not included or uninvited, we miss that opportunity. It's the one time where you turn on today's show when they're talking about Small Business Saturday. You see it in national media and national times, and what do? We said, well, it was awful cold on Saturday. We didn't really go over too well. What could we have done better? That's the question we need to ask ourselves.
I'm not gonna lie though, if I was any business not on Main Street, I'd be, I'd be wondering why every council session, half the council session is talking about. We have a lot of business in Taneytown that isn't specifically on Main Street. And the amount of time we spend on this for something that I know is not gonna satisfy.
Before we move on, I do have an answer about the music. The DJ got here, was setting up, and apparently his equipment wasn't working in the cold. And the band canceled Saturday morning because it was a wind chill of 22 degrees. So, yeah, so that's what happened with the music. So that one I did have an answer for.
Right, so we were,
So.
in one sense, we were the, victim of just bad luck and the weather. And those kinds of things are sometimes gonna happen to you, but, the whole tenor of the day, as I was talking to the why didn't we do more? Why wasn't more done? Where were the passports? Where were the why weren't, I know that, for example, Deja Vu, they did go and asked them one time, can we put a couple of tables in here? And she said, well, no, I don't really have room for tables to do anything like that. But then that was the end of it. She never heard another word. So there's a lot of moving parts, and we're not going to solve all this tonight. But I wanted to bring this out and make this part of the discussion because from the small business standpoint, and I'm kind of surprised a little at your attitude, Mr. Mayor, because you're a business on Main Street.
I don't advocate for myself. Again, I understand that there's more businesses than just the businesses on Main Street. And my
that's-
worries is you don't, again, I think you talk to a selective group of people. And it isn't, trust me, when I go to the businesses and I talk with them, their main concern is the businesses that aren't open. The spots that are anchors on our Main Street. That is what actually drives a Main Street. That is what actually drives business. That's what drives people out there. It isn't because the town doesn't have a committee. It's businesses that people want to shop at. That is the basics of business. And The idea that it's being thrown at the city's feet all the time, that it's the city's fault that this isn't successful, that's not the truth. The truth is there's a power struggle of people who want to be the leaders of the Main Street Committee or the Main Street Movement, whatever it is, but I don't see it to serve all of Main Street. I see it to serve certain people. That's as much as I'll say on it, but that's still city manager report, or did we get to
I think we kind of
reports?
moved into departmental reports.
Okay. Department reports, Councilman Cheney.
So I have some things to share in the spirit of advertising. The police department is having some upcoming events. Miss Haley Ingalls asked me to share in the event that someone doesn't have social media or the event that someone missed it. This Sunday, December the 8th, is their 6th annual Pack the Police Car food drive. That is happening at Kenny's from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Taneytown Police Department personnel will be collecting non-perishable food and hygiene items for the Trinity Lutheran Church Food Pantry and the Wance Chevrolet Christmas for Community Kids. That campaign will be collecting toys and cash donations for their toy drive. So please come out and support the town and the police department in providing food for those in need this holiday season. Their second event is December 15th at the police station, where they will hold their second annual December to Remember event from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Ages infant to 18 years old will be included in receiving a gift to any and all who are in need. People just need to show up. Santa and Mrs. Claus will be there for free pictures with Santa, and there will also be food trucks and refreshments, which will be free for all attendees. The police department is still collecting gifts, and the raffle prize is currently at $600 cash. Every toy that someone in the community donates earns you a raffle ticket, so that prize is rising. So the police department's excited. Come out and support them, and hopefully that will benefit the community. And I think that there's also a Christmas market this weekend at the bowling alley.
Yes.
So those are some big events happening this weekend.
Councilmember Fuller, did you want to go over?
Yep, Saturday we have our tree lighting at Memorial Park. It starts at 4:30. It will start with the candy cane hunt. There'll be musical performances and a hayride per typical, and then special guest at 5:30. Santa will be there to take pictures in the gazebo. That's until 8 o'clock.
Do you have anything else for department reports?
Unless there are questions
The
about.
Department of Public Works wants to remind the public that due to Christmas and New Year's Day falling on Wednesday this year, trash collection and recycling will be collected on Thursday, December 26th, and Thursday, January 2nd.
Gotta put our trash out Christmas evening.
Also, the city will be providing Christmas tree pickup. Ecology Refuge will be picking up trees on Saturday, January 11th, only one day. No yard waste or loose pine branches will be collected, just Christmas trees.
Any other comments, questions, concerns for department reports? Hearing none, proceeding forward. Legal report. Jim, did Jay have anything for you tonight, or are we good on that?
We're good on that.
Good on that? Sounds good. Heading down to new business. Monthly financial report. Questions, comments, concerns by council? Hearing none, proceeding forward. Accounts payables. Questions, comments, concerns by council? Hearing none, proceeding forward. Award of Westview Drive water line replacement project. Yeah, that's not, shouldn't be.
We just had the bid opening for that today. We received 4 bids, and CDM Smith is committed to getting us a recommendation letter by the end of the week, so we'll have that for Monday night.
Good questions, comments, concerns regarding that? None, proceeding forward. CDM Smith 2025 rate proposal. Questions, comments, concerns by council? Hearing none, proceeding forward. Approval of 2025 through 2030 lease, Bollinger Park, Matthew Clark. Questions, comments, concerns by council?
For both of these, Jim, do we open this to the public? I'm just curious, is it?
This year, we did not, because we already had leases existing on those two parcels, so we gave them the option just to renew their leases. We didn't invite bids or do a public process.
I just thought that there are other people in the area, properties, that probably would like the opportunity to be given.
When we first opted to do the lease, we did do some outreach, to folks who had expressed interest, because we did have a few folks reach out to us. And we tried to make it known that we were entertaining lease offers at the time.
Right.
But,
And it just seems, like, if it was a year-long thing, that would be one thing. We're talking about 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't that be something that we offer?
And also, are they?
I mean, there's not going to be a million people that want it.
Yeah,
I'm just
no,
saying,
but
a very specific few
The
that
other
may be
question
interested.
that I had is with a 5-year lease, if these are city properties, if we wanted to do something else with that property, do we have, I kind of glanced through the lease, but do we have right of termination for our convenience?
we do, right. So, and if we, if we, for some reason, try to exit the lease after, the property's been planted, there are certainly protections in there for the farmer that, we would have to basically buy out of it in that scenario. And we've already seen with the Fringer Road lease, when we did the pollinator meadow and the development of Bollinger Park, that, that reduced the area that was tillable for him. So, that obviously reduced the lease expense. So, again, we opted just to renew the leases without going through a public process at this point. So if council wants us to do that, we certainly can. But no, we didn't.
I don't know how much work needs to be done, now. Like, I don't know how quickly they need to know. But it just seems like there could be a way to at least reach out to people that we know have been interested in the past and just say, by the way, this is what's going on. Is there any interest?
Well, if
a thought.
that's, yeah. If council would like us to do that, we certainly can do some sort of advertisement, for the acreage.
I mean, I'm not council, but I'm in favor of it if council wanted to
To put it out for,
put it out.
can we, how soon do we need to have the lease done? How much time do we have if we wanted to put out the feelers and see if somebody else was interested?
I don't know what the timing is, for cultivation and fertilizing and things like that are pending, I guess, fertilization, I guess, mostly this time of year.
Get more information before Monday,
But
and then when we get to the vote
Yeah,
on
I'll
Monday,
talk
we'll
with Lorena
discuss it
on
more.
Monday about it. Yeah. And we're not talking about large sums of money either for us to spend a lot of money, say, taking out a newspaper ad or something, because
And that's what I said, if you could just reach out to the people who have shown an interest in the past, maybe that would be enough. And I don't know, how many that's been, or if they're even still.
See what you can
If,
come up for Monday.
Yeah, if, I will ask, council if anybody's aware of someone interested in farming the properties, to please share that with me. So I'm only aware of 3 or 4 individuals who have expressed any interest in farming city properties over the years.
If we'll get back to it on Monday. See. Next up, approval 2025-2030 lease, Festival Park, Robert Bowers. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding that? I know we kind of.
Kind of the same
Same
thing.
idea.
Yep.
Same thing.
Heading down, approval of special event permit, Alyssa Richards Car Show, Memorial Park, October 4th, 2025. Questions, comments, concerns by council? Hearing none, and proceeding down to public comment pertaining to agenda items. Any public comment tonight? Hearing none, I am proceeding down to adjournment. Would someone like to make a
Motion to adjourn.
Looking for a second.
Second that, happily.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.